Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow speakers, all guests present here in Ljubljana, and good morning to our audience joining us online. PMI Impact is a global initiative supporting projects dedicated to reducing or preventing illegal trade and countering its negative consequences for individuals, their families, and communities. Illicit trade deprives society of billions in lost tax revenue, undermines legitimate businesses, funds criminal organizations, and harms consumers. At World Economic Forum, it was said, if illicit trade were a country, its economy would be larger than Brazil, Italy, and Canada. PMI Impact funds also projects in academia that research illicit trade trends. In 2019, Center of Business Excellence was selected and awarded funds for the research project, Broader Impacts of Illicit Cigarette Trade in Europe, Key Drivers, Main Trafficking Routes, and Capacity Buildings. Today's event is one of the last activity of the project. We will present and discuss the key findings of the PMI Impact project and gain valuable insights for further improvement of efforts in the fight against the illicit tobacco trade in the Western Balkans. First, may I thank each of our speakers for taking part in the conference, Illicit Tobacco Trade in Times of Crisis, Western Balkan. I also want to thank all of you for connecting with us online, and of course, all of you who are here with us. I'm Monica Lapania, Director of the Center of Business Excellence at the School of Economics and Business, University of Ljubljana. The findings of PMI Impact Research, which the Center of Business Excellence has been working on since 2019, have been used to identify best practice recommendations and to train specialists in countries of the Balkan region. For more about the project itself and key findings, I would like to give a word to Jože Damjan, professor at the School of Economics and Business, University of Ljubljana, and has been working with us on this project as a research team leader. Jože, I'm welcoming you at this hybrid event in the next studio. The screen is yours. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to, in the beginning, to give a brief overview of our project and the main findings of our project. There were three main aims of our project. First, we wanted to identify the key drivers of illicit cigarette trade and main trade routes between Asia and Europe. Second aim was to identify best practices in fighting illicit cigarette trade by, of course, using the expertise of countries which have the most efficient methods to fight illicit trade in cigarettes. And the third aim was a capacity building project that meant that we conducted training in each of the 8 southeastern European countries, presenting best practices in fighting illicit cigarette trade. And also to train public officers on most efficient prevention methods. In our project, there were three groups of researchers. So there was a cooperation between 3 universities. There was the University of Ljubljana. We were the project leader, and then we cooperated with our colleagues from the University of Leuven, from Belgium, and the third partner in our project was Nazarbayev University from Kazakhstan. The structure of the project was defined in 4 phases, lasting over 2 years. In the first phase, in the first 6 months, we had 4 aims, which resulted in also in the 4 deliverables. The first 3 deliverables were aimed to study, to analyze the illicit, so that the tobacco markets in 3 regions, in Asia, in Western Europe, and in Central and Southeastern Europe, and to also identify the illicit trade, so the legal market in cigarettes, and also the illicit trade in cigarettes. And the 4th deliverable was devoted to the illicit cigarette trade, so basically to have an overview of the empirical studies on the illicit trade in cigarettes. In the second phase, which lasted for the second 6 months, there were basically 5 deliverables. In the first deliverable, we wanted to to develop an empirical model. Actually, that would help us later on to study the main drivers of illicit trade of cigarettes between Asia and Europe. This is what we did in the deliverable D2. And then there were 3 other deliverables here, which all studied the policy frameworks in fighting illicit cigarette trade in these 3 regions. And then the final deliverable in this second phase was the intermediate progress report after the first year of the project. In the third phase, we had 2 main deliverables. The first deliverable was an analysis of the importance of key drivers of illicit cigarette trade on trafficking routes between Asia and Europe. Basically, we used the model that we developed in the previous deliverable in order to study the main factors that are driving the illicit trade in cigarettes. I will later talk more about this deliverable, just to present the main findings of our study. And then the next deliverable here in that period, in the third period, was a policy paper where we wanted to give a very precise country-specific policy recommendations for each of the 8 countries that are part of our study, and which are all located on the Balkan routes, and on how to best reduce the illicit trade in cigarettes in the future. Let me give you some brief overview of the main findings that we found in our study on the drivers of illicit cigarette trade. So first of all, the problem with the illicit trade in cigarettes is that we actually don't have very good data on that. Basically, we have some estimates on how much actually there is this black market in cigarettes, but actually we really don't know. But what we do have, so these estimates, which we are more so with different methods like the KPMG SUN project and so on, what we have here is that we get some aggregate numbers on the share of illicit cigarette trade for each country, but we don't know really where these illegal cigarettes are coming from. And here our project came into the story. So what we wanted to do in our study is that we wanted to use these aggregate numbers on the illicit cigarette trade, and then we wanted to decompose it into bilateral flows, so that we know actually, if we know that in Slovenia, let's say, there is a 10% of trade in cigarettes which is illegal, right? That we want to know, where are these flows coming? Are they coming from Croatia, from Serbia, from Turkey, and so on? So what we did, we actually used a gravity type model for illegal cigarette flows that we developed previously. And then we applied to that. We used in our study bilateral controls for gravity, for crime, shadow economy, then on the price gap, income gap, tax differences, smoking rates, and also the cigarette consumption in different countries, and we looked at the difference, bilateral difference between 2 countries, right? And then after estimating our model, we used these estimates that we got from the gravity model to decompose aggregate flows to each country in order to predict bilateral illegal trade in cigarettes. Let me give you a brief example. First of all, so the main data, the main variables in our model were the income gap, that means the difference between GDP per capita between two countries. The assumption here is, right, that cigarettes will flow, so there will be a flow of illegal cigarettes from a country with lower GDP per capita to a country with higher GDP per capita. Then the next variable was the price gap. Again, the assumption here is that illegal trade in cigarettes will go from country with a low price of cigarettes to the country with higher price of cigarettes. And then we have the distance between the source and the destination country in our model, then difference in the population size. Here the assumption was that, you know, the bigger the difference in size between two countries, the less trade the less illegal trade in cigarettes there will be. Then next variable was the difference in the share of a shadow economy. That means the gray economy. So actually, you know, if the origin country has a higher share of shadow economy, that means there will be more likely higher share, higher trade of illegal cigarettes coming from this country and flowing into the country with the lower share of the shadow economy. And then we have, again, existence of common border. Let's say that countries that are close to each other or that border to each other will have bigger flows of illegal trade in cigarettes. Then a very important variable was whether the countries are on the same smuggling route, right? Then we also took into account the destination country crime rate. The higher this crime rate, the more likely actually there will be also higher share of illegal trade in cigarettes because this different. So because the illegal trade in cigarettes goes hand in hand also with other types of criminal. And then we had several other indicators of legal production and the distribution capacity in each of the countries, meaning that if there is in the origin country more legal production of cigarettes, there is also more likely actually there will be also some illegal part of that will be also then traded to other countries. So our main results, we found that there were four main drivers of illicit trade in cigarettes. First, the most important variable was that we found was that both countries are aligned on the same smuggling route that was revealed empirically. The next important variable was the income gap. So again, the trade in illegal trade in cigarettes will go from the higher developed from the lower developed country to the higher developed country, similar with the price gap, and then also the extent of shadow economy was also very, very important, right? So if there is a higher share of shadow economy in the origin countries, there is more likely actually that we will see also the higher trade in illicit cigarettes, illicit trade in cigarettes coming from this country into other countries. While on the other side, we found that distance didn't seem to actually be a deterrent factor. That means it didn't affect much the total trade in illegal cigarettes. That means that with higher difference in prices between two countries, actually these cigarettes can go or travel over longer distances, and so distance doesn't matter very much here. So there are other factors that are much more important actually as a driver of illicit trade in cigarettes. What we found, let me give you a brief example of Slovenia. So if we decompose the Slovenian share of the aggregate share of the illicit trade in cigarettes into the bilateral flows, we will see that actually these flows are coming mainly, so that means that 2/3 of that illicit cigarettes are coming actually from four source countries, from Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Greece, and Turkey. Right? Altogether, this is more than 2/3. And if you look at the geography of that, you will see now that these cigarettes are coming either from the close markets, but also from the countries which are further away, like Greece and Turkey. If you look for the other countries, what are the main sources of illicit cigarettes in these countries, we will see that the main source country was actually Ukraine for most of the countries in Europe, followed by Russia, Serbia, Romania and Bulgaria. So these are the countries which are the origin countries of the illicit trade in cigarettes. That was our third phase. But then in the fourth stage, actually, our plan was actually here that we organized the capacity building and trainings of public officials in countries which are located on the Balkan smuggling route, right? So that we wanted to give here trainings on the best practices by using the expertise of countries with most efficient policy frameworks. And then we had that we would organize the 2 days workshops in each of the 8 countries on this route. So to conduct the trainings of the public officials and so on. So the plan was to invite the experts from the countries which we identified to have the best practices in fighting the illegal trade in cigarettes. So, like, in particular on cigarette smuggling, on customs and authority, money laundering, organized crime, and so on. And we wanted to invite them in each of the 8 countries to give a training to the public officials in those countries. The target audience was mainly the law enforcement officers that are detecting and investigating excise crimes, particularly the cigarettes trade, and then other police, customs, and judiciary officers. But then the problem was with the COVID, right? So we were unfortunate actually that in this period, right, in the fourth stage of our research, actually the COVID situation happened, and we were actually unable to produce this deliverable in the original form, right? So in accordance with the PME project team, we then modified our plan or this output in the sense that we then produced first a series of online courses, and secondly also a series of online discussion series, webinars in the phase 5. So basically what we did here, there were 4 activities. First of all, over the course of the last year, between April and September 2021, we developed the online course on illicit tobacco in Balkans, from policy to practice. And this online course comprised of 5 modules. So the first module was on the economics of tobacco smuggling. Second was on institutional and regulatory capacities. Then the third one was on modus operandi, including the related organized crime in those countries. The fourth module was on detection and prevention methods, including the best practices in implementing the protocol and tobacco control. And the final module was devoted to the post-COVID illicit trade, right? And we wanted to show also what happened after the COVID happened. So we developed online interactive education platform consisting of these 5 modules. Each module was about 90 minutes, and this was a kind of a big success. Actually, there was a lot of people that watched that, a lot of people from these 8 countries that actually viewed that online. And we here invited the experts, so the best experts in the field, which prepared the material for developing the online course based on these findings from our previous stages of research in our project, and also from their general knowledge about that field. And so those experts then also took into account the best practices which were recognized in other regions, especially in the Western European countries. So in the fields of the institutional, legislative, setup, detection, investigation, and prevention methods, modus operandi, and so on. Right? Then our second activity, which was conducted during February this year, was that we organized a series of 2 hours online discussion series, webinars, actually, for the participants from these 8 different countries. There were 5 series of webinars where we invited the experts in the field that were covering the models, and we organized interactive online panel series, so with these main experts from the field. also those that were part of our research and other main experts in the field. And this discussion series was recorded and was available online on the internet. And the target audience was not limited just to the public officials in those 8 countries, but in the Balkan region, but also to the other general public. And it was also a kind of a great success with a lot of online views of our series. And we also conducted a series of marketing activities of the discussion series through various social media and other channels. And we believe that these materials, these online modules and this online discussion series, these webinars, will stay here for a longer time and will actually serve as a good source of knowledge and of best practices, actually how to fight the illicit trade in cigarettes in not only in these 8 countries in the Balkan region, but also for the other general public and for the other countries. And this was kind of our alternative deliverable. So this is how we actually modified our initial plan, right? So that during the COVID situation, we were able then to produce some new products which were not planned in the beginning. And I hope that we done our job very well on that. And now, actually, I will give the word to Sandra and Tjasa, who will present the achievements and the main findings of their part on the best practices in fighting the illicit cigarette trades. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jože. The illicit tobacco trade represents a significant challenge to policymakers and enforcers as it causes numerous negative socio-economic consequences. Now, we will have a look at the institutional and regulatory capacities in the fight against the illicit tobacco trade in the Balkans. I would like to invite Tjasa Redek, professor at the School of Economics and Business University of Ljubljana, who was also a member of a research team, to give us insights into the institutional and regulatory capacities in the fight against illicit tobacco trade in the Balkans. Tjasa, the floor is yours.
Illicit tobacco trade, which includes all activities from distributing, selling, and buying tobacco products, which is not in accordance with the law, represents a significant challenge to policymakers and enforcers since it causes numerous negative socioeconomic consequences. We will have a look at the institutional and regulatory capacities in the fight against illicit tobacco trade in the Balkans today, but I will also present some of the general aspects and some interesting data. So we'll first have a look at why we want to fight or we need to fight illicit tobacco trade. Then we will have a look at some basic facts about global tobacco consumption. And following that, we will have a look at the key institutional arrangements, both globally as well as regionally, and we will finish with some future challenges. The World Health Organization's protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products stresses that illicit tobacco trade increases the accessibility and affordability of tobacco products, which further contributes to the use of tobacco products as well as related health and broader problems, since it counters the efficiency of anti-tobacco policy measures in general. In addition, it causes losses in the collected taxes as well as increases crime. So, summed up, the most important reasons to fight illicit tobacco trade are the following. First, the health reasons, since it deteriorates the general health of the population and is a major cause of serious illness and premature death. Second, Social and socioeconomic impacts that it causes are impacting more vulnerable groups. It increases also addiction, increases crime presence, etc. Also, it affects the quality of governance and impacts the crime rates, which overall, of course, deteriorates the well-being in the society. Now, overall, the smoking prevalence has been declining, most notably, as you can see from the picture, in the developed countries, where it was also the highest. So between 2007 and 2017, we can observe a decline in smoking in the high-income countries from 27 to 21.6% of population, while globally, the smoking prevalence has declined by about 3 percentage points. Although the prevalence of tobacco smoking has stalled and even declined a bit, the global tobacco consumption as such in absolute values is expected still to increase, primarily due to the population growth, as you can see from the picture. So the data is available up until 2025, and with the exception of a decline in 2020, you can see that up until 2025, it's expected to increase. Now, the dominant form of tobacco consumption are cigarettes, but tobacco smoking is also popular, and also the interest in cigars is increasing. Overall, the tobacco consumption is expected to reach almost $900 billion, which is, in short, about as much as 18 times what Slovenia produces in 1 year as a country as a whole. And even this number, of course, is underestimated because this is the official tobacco sales. So illicit trade here is not included. Now, given the discussion of illicit trade in this region, which is the focus of the event today, it's perhaps worthwhile mentioning also a few relevant pieces of information for the region. As you can see from the picture, there are several countries in the SEE region with very high smoking prevalence, even over 40% in Montenegro and Greece, and above 35% also in Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia. It is also interesting to see, if you look at this picture, that smoking prevalence is even higher, or these countries are ranked even higher if the smoking of women is considered. So you can see Montenegro, Serbia, Croatia on top 3 spots. Now, COVID and increased tensions in the society have given a boost to substance abuse, which includes also, of course, cigarettes. Therefore, continuing the fight against the illicit tobacco trade and tobacco at large, as well as all other illicit activities, is even more important. Now, in continuing, I will touch on the 2 important elements of the fight against illicit tobacco trade and tobacco at large. First, the global institutional setting, and second, the selected local highlights. Now, at the global level, there are, of course, 2 most important aspects to touch upon. First, the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and the FCTC protocol. Now, the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control aims at lowering the use of tobacco and tobacco products in general because of its detrimental effect on health and also other negative effects. It has been signed by 168 countries. The second is the protocol, which prescribes that countries must, under the protocol, first adopt and implement effective measures to control or regulate the supply chain. They must implement necessary steps or measures that will increase the efficiency of the authorities in the prevention, deterrence, detection, as well as investigation, prosecution, etc. Implement measures that will support technical assistance, ensure efficient financial support, build capacity, and ensure international cooperation in the achievement of the illicit tobacco trade reduction. It must also ensure cooperation domestically between different institutions, which we will see represents a challenge, and, of course, international cooperation in order to lower illicit tobacco trades. It prescribes a number of measures to control tobacco use. Each of the set of measures, which can be divided into the supply, demand side, and other measures will be studied in more detail. Now let's have a look first at the whole set and address also a bit the efficiency. Now the measures can be divided into the demand side, supply side, and other measures. The demand side measures include, as you can see, price and tax measures, non-price measures, protection from exposure to tobacco smoke, regulation of the contents of tobacco products, regulation of tobacco product disclosures, packaging, labeling, education, communication, training, and public awareness, tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, demand reduction measures concerning the tobacco dependence as well as cessation. The supply side measures include measures that target, first of all, illicit tobacco products, then sales to and also sales by minors, and also provision of support for economically viable alternative activities to those whose survival basically depends on tobacco. The convention also addresses other aspects, among them the protection of the environment and health of persons, scientific technical cooperation, communication of information between different countries and institutions, research, surveillance and exchange of information, reporting and exchange of information, cooperation in the scientific, technical, legal fields, and other institutional arrangements. Now, let's have a look first at some of the effects of these measures using some interesting highlights from the data from the World Health Organization, which are collected by Statista. So in 2020, around 60% of global population was covered with warning labels, as you can see from the demand side measures, and approximately the same, just a few percentage points less, by monitoring. Mass media was targeted by measures in around 43% of global population. More stringent measures, such as smoke-free environments, were already imposed on around 24% of global population, and similarly also advertising bans. Now, in the past few years, as you can see, the most widely used, if assessing by the percentage of global population covered by selected measures, were monitoring and warning labels, with warning labels, as we saw also before, covering in total around 60% of population. And these two measures, both monitoring as well as warning labels, were the two measures which recorded the highest increase in the percentage of population that was covered additionally in the observed period, so in the 4 years between 2016 and 2020. Now, pricing is the next important measure that reduces demand. And as you can see from the figure, cigarettes have become more expensive in around 90 countries between 2010 and 2020. And this is especially important also to note that this happened in 42 middle-income economies where smoking is a serious challenge. However, the differences in global prices of cigarettes are still huge. Now, if in the developed countries the price per pack of cigarettes, everything included, in purchasing power parity was almost $9, it was less than a third of that in the low-income economies and around half of that in the middle-income economies. And this huge diversity in prices is one of the important drivers of illicit tobacco trade. Now, in addition to tackling demand, the convention and the protocol also focus on the supply. Generally, the supply side measures include three important sets. First, it's tackling the illicit trade, which we will touch upon slightly later. Second, addressing the minors. And third, providing economically viable alternatives to those who live off the illicit tobacco activities. For example, you can see in the slide, providing alternative crops which countries' farmers can produce instead of tobacco is such an example which is supported by international institutions. Now, in addition to that, the World Health Organization's protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products which was adopted in the fall of 2012, prescribes additional suggestions. Now, the protocol acknowledges that trade in contraband and counterfeit products increases the general use of tobacco. Therefore, the protocol stresses the role of supply chain control and a comprehensive address of the problem, which includes also a comprehensive dealing with the offenses. So these are the most important two aspects of the protocol. Now, the protocol suggests a number of measures, but also prescribes in detail the required steps and the obligations of national authorities that are expected to help fight the illicit tobacco trade. The main focus of the protocol suggested measures are in ensuring two things. First of all, providing efficient control of the whole supply chain, its conduct and prevention of any illicit tobacco trade or tobacco and products entering the illicit trade, and efficient dealing with the offenses, which includes both protocols for determining unlawful conduct, liabilities and sanctions, as well as treatment of any illicit tobacco. And there are a number of measures which countries and institutions, so policymakers, must follow in order to ensure that the supply chain is efficiently controlled. So you can see just a small fraction of the procedures in the slide. So do you have manufacturer control? Do you have licensing and etc.? Now let's focus a bit on the Balkan region and on the EU, but in a comparative context. Generally, in the Western Europe, the illicit cigarette trade is coordinated by organized crime groups which smuggle unlicensed or counterfeit products into the EU. The production varies from very small illegal garage factories to large industrial scale production with efficient transportation systems. Postal services are also, unfortunately, an important distribution system. In the southeastern Europe, cheap whites and counterfeits of cheap whites dominate, with road transportation being the most important distribution system. Now, these countries are also important because of their maritime or other transport, since they represent an entry point and a source of transit towards the Central Europe. Now, in Eurasia, the exports and transit are very important from global perspective as well, and given the structure of transit routes, maritime transport should be the focus of policymakers. Now, generally, illicit trade is often closely linked to other organized crime activities. For example, in Western Europe, illicit trade is closely linked to narcotics and weapons trade and illegal migration. And illicit trade often represents a source of income that finances other crime activities. In Southeastern Europe, it is a mixture of very organized crime groups as well as small individual sellers. Similarly, as in the Western Europe, illicit trade is closely linked to narcotics, weapons trade, and illegal migration, and it often, again, represents an income, a source of income for other crime activities. Now, to efficiently combat illicit trade, factors that drive it, of course, must be understood. Here, there are quite significant differences between the regions in question. While in the Western Europe, these are primarily price differences, corruption, lack of border control because of the one market. In the Southeastern Europe, on the other hand, they are more linked to high incentives and significant lack of control, low sanctions, low likelihood of being sanctioned, and of course price differences which affect potential earning. Generally, talking about institutional capacities in all regions, of course, customs and police are the most important institutional capacity. With the EU, on the other hand, having an advantage of additional cooperation within OLAF, Europol, Eurojust, Frontex, which boost the efficiency of illicit tobacco trade fighting. Now, these institutions deepen the cooperation between enforcers, ensure more information flow, represent ground for more efficient fight, as I said, against crime in comparison to both Southeastern Europe as well as Eurasia, where the control is predominantly in the first two, so on the border customs and police. Often also in these regions, lack of institutional cooperation, even within countries, represents an obstacle. So how could illicit tobacco trade fight be improved? First, the price differences due to taxes and tax structure could be reduced. We saw before the data that these are still very significant, especially if comparing developed versus less developed countries. So lowering the price differences, thus decreasing the motivation for illicit trade, is very important. Second, the traceability, which is possible nowadays due to technological development, could give an additional boost to the anti-illicit tobacco trade fight. Although in case of illicit whites, of course, this is going to still represent a technical challenge. In the Southeastern Europe, unification of taxation is also important, but primarily it's also important to improve the enforcement and institutional cooperation and the use of IT technologies that are already available and could improve the flow of information and easier fight against illicit tobacco trade. Similarly, could be said also for Eurasia. Now, overall, efficient reduction of general tobacco use and illicit trade require a comprehensive approach at a country and international level due to the complexity of reasons, motivations, as well as supply side and demand side factors that affect the presence and the dynamics of the illicit trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Tjasa. And now we are moving from policy to practice. It's my great honor that we have with us also our representatives from the Financial Administration of the Republic of Slovenia today. First, Ms. Katarina Blaznik and then Mr. Dušan Pečnik, who will give us a bit more insights into Slovenian tobacco trade. Firstly, I would like to invite Ms. Katarina Blaznik to join me on the stage. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. I work in excise department, so I deal with excise legislation in Slovenia. And because of that, I'm going to tell you a little more about legal traffic, legal production and legal trade of excise products in Slovenia. So one of the excise products is also tobacco, so we're going to talk about that too. This description is going to be very briefly. If we talk about excise legislation in Slovenia, I have to tell you first that excise duty is tax on consumption. That means that the main fact here is that excise duty should be paid in the country where excise product was consumed or sold to final customers and used. In Slovenia, the system and obligation of paying the excise duty is regulated by Excise Duty Act. First Excise Duty Act in Slovenia was introduced in 1999, and it was in use, so it was applicable quite long time, quite to 2016, of course with several amendments and additions. And then in August, the renewed Excise Duty Act came into force. Slovenian excise legislation is harmonized with the EU legislation, And I have to tell you that also excise legislation of other member states have to be harmonized with EU legislation. That means that the laws, actually the rules that are written down in EU legislation have to be written down also in national legislation. And all the products that are excise products in EU legislation have to be excise products also in member states. All that is connected, and legislation is the same for these harmonized excise products. Also, the movement and supervision of these products is then easier. Of course, EU legislation for tobacco products, we say that that's tobacco directive, is quite old, and it's a little old-fashioned now. But on the level of EU, these changes are very slowly. It's easier to change national EU legislation, so it's not surprised that many countries, member states, have, besides harmonized excise products, also quite some national excise products, because we have to monitor the market and we have to adapt to new products which are very common, and almost every year something new is made and something new is used. And many of these new products are designed so that tax doesn't have to be paid for them and become very popular. That was one of that products was also, for example, electronic cigarettes, tobacco for smoking, tobacco for heating. We put that in our legislation in 2016. However, it's not yet in EU legislation. But I have to tell you that also many other member states have these products in their national legislation. For example, this new product, tobacco for heating, is very popular in Slovenia, and we collect quite a lot of excise product with its use. If we go a little back to common excise legislation, excise duty is payable besides tobacco products also on alcohol and alcoholic beverages, and on energy products and electricity. But because we are going to talk more about tobacco products, for tobacco, excise duty for tobacco products is levied on cigarettes, cigarillos and cigars, and on smoking tobacco. We can say that these three products are harmonized products. So there are also excise products in all other member states. However, the excise duty is levied additionally in Slovenia, as I already explained, on heated tobacco and electronic cigarettes, actually fluid of electronic cigarettes. According to European excise legislation and also to Slovenian excise legislation and other legislation of member states, the excise goods can be moved between member states on two ways. One way is under the excise duty suspension arrangement. That means that excise products are moving from one excise license holder, for example in Slovenia, to another excise license holder in other member states. So they both have to be license holders, and that means that they have a license to accept or to ship excise products without paying excise duty. In this way, excise duty is payable in a last country, so in the country of consumption. For suspension arrangement of excise duty is also prescribed in legislation that it must take place under cover of an electronic administrative document. And the consignor, so the person who ships these products, lodges this electronic administrative document in the EMCS. That's Excise Movement and Control System. That's one system for every member state. And that's why we know that movement and tracking the movement of harmonized products is easier, because all of these movements are in this excise movement and control system. This is computerized system for, as I already said, for tracking and monitoring the movement of excise goods under duty suspension arrangement. Of course, we have also another way of sending excise goods from one place to another. That system is called system with already paid duty, but I'm not going to talk much about this, because for tobacco products, which has to be marked with Slovenian excise stamp, it's not relevant. It's not permitted to be moved with system where excise duty is already paid in another country, because it's marked with foreign tobacco stamps. Tobacco products with foreign tobacco stamps are not allowed to be sold in Slovenian market. They have to be marked with Slovenian tobacco stamp. In Slovenia, we have the most problem. So if I touch a little the area of illegal trade with raw tobacco, raw tobacco is not an excise product. Of course, it's a special product. We try to track the movement with some national rules, but we have the most problem with it. Because it's not written, the code is not written in EMCS, and it can't be tracked on that way. There was a lot of initiative and wishes that this product would be also included in national tobacco directive, which is revised now. We hope it's going to be issued soon. But there is also a lot of not enough initiative from all member states, because member states where a lot of growers of tobacco works and where a lot of production of raw tobacco is taking place, it's much easier to move this product if it's not excise product. It's much more complicated and a lot of more, different forms to fill if product is excise product. So that is one of the main keys why raw tobacco is quite a problem product in Slovenia. As I already said, I work in excise department and I deal with excise legislation in Slovenia. About illegal movement of tobacco products, we'll tell you more about my colleague, Dušan Pečnik, who deals with illegal trade, especially tobacco products, raw tobacco.
Okay, hello to all. I'm coming from Slovenian Financial Administration. My name is Dušan, and I'm working at the investigation unit, specialized for the excise goods. So I will try to represent you some kind of modus operandi. It's look likely in all countries in the member states is going on, including in Slovenia. As you already heard, we have the problems with the raw tobacco. That means with tobacco leaves, because they are not excise goods. So this operation started in 220 because the French colleagues detected that some illicit production of cigarettes is going on here in Slovenia. So we opened the investigations and start with cooperating with the police and the prosecutors. So we found out a really good position for illicit tobacco production. How you can get the raw tobacco? It's not a problem because in Europe all the countries have a lot of amounts of the raw tobacco now. We have here a company from Croatia and a company from Bulgaria that they are supplying this illicit factory with raw tobacco. On the papers were the information that this raw tobacco should go to even Belgium, Spain, Portugal, maybe France. That depends on the documents. But all these consignments were unloaded here in Slovenia in some warehouse. These criminal groups always looking for some remote warehouses because they are not so much on the eyes for the people or the government or anybody else. So they found one warehouse here in Slovenia. It's a really big warehouse. Why big? Because they need to set all the machines and the production material into one place. So usually they get some people, in this case they were from Bosnia, sometimes they are also from other countries, not members in EU, but they have used these people for making cigarettes or cutting tobacco, doesn't matter what. But they are started with the whole process started around July. So now coming July, there will be the perfect time to start a new business. And they are working on this business about 3 to 4 months, no more. And that is closed. When they finished, they pack up and remove to some another city, country, I don't know where, but they are moving around. They are not on the same place more than 3-4 months. So in this case, we found out that any consignment comes from either Croatia or Bulgaria. They always have escort of 3-4 civil cars, different registration plates, not registered all in Slovenia, usually in Germany, and these cars were very, very high rank. They are not usually cars, but they always escort all consignments. Whether tobacco leaves or cutted tobacco or cigarettes, doesn't matter, they always have the escort, and they are observing what are going on during this process. They are coming to the warehouse and start to unload it. Why we get suspected what is going on? At the night in this warehouse is unusually that the light is all night on. What they are doing, why the music playing, why a lot of trash were found around this warehouse, and even one night we detected some smell of chemicals we know they are using for tobacco coloring, moisturing, aroma, and that kind of things. So we start to watching on this position for 5 months, every day, because we cannot use it GPS devices, we cannot use it cameras, we can only with the personal observation or surveillance we can find out what is going on. We found another location because they are trying to hide tobacco. Some places they are more unusual, like on farms, bars, anywhere. Then they are going with the small trucks and transported to all this warehouse where the production is going on. In these small locations, they are not illicit production. It's just warehousing, nothing else. In first case, we found, but it's not directly with this case of Bordeaux, but anyway, the same people were there, and there was the first case we found out. We say that cut tobacco is different. Is cut tobacco is fine cut tobacco or is not so fine cut tobacco, because for the cigarette making they are needed more fine tobacco, because they are also packing the cutting tobacco in some packets and selling around the streets here. And we also found how they are packing cigarettes. So there's not final packing. So that means someone else must pack this in the little boxes then. Because there are too much cigarettes in one pack. Normally it's 20 cigarettes, no more in one pack when you buy it. In this case, we found also packages for Marlboro cigarettes. They already be stamped and ready to cut off and just pack it. We found even one looking for workers in the Facebook who can come for, I don't know, I think it was 15 euros per hour to pack the cigarettes in this small package. So the languages on these stamped packages was German, Slovenian, North Macedonian, and even in Ukrainian. So we can now think where these cigarettes should go when we finished all the cases. But always was involved with Slovenian citizens, and the production or drivers were always from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the production, we think so, were always people from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Because in Slovenia there's no more industry of the tobacco, now is no machines, no people, they are knowing to do what to do with these machines. So that's why the says that in November 2021, this consignment comes from this warehouse where they're cutting, and we think this consignment should go to or Slovakia or Poland, where they have it illicit cigarette production. So we say that this one was 12 tons. When we calculated the excise and VAT, how much that is for one truck, 12 tons, you see almost 2 million euros for one consignment, so 12 tons. And the seller here was Slovenian company, buyer should be in Belgium, and the carriers usually using trucks with 3 or 4 different registration plates. That depends. Just change it, the plates before the transportation or after the transportation, so they never can be detected in our toll system as the right registration plates. We found also they are imported in the Croatian border some filters for the production of cigarettes. So we follow this truck is going exactly in the same position as already the illicit production is going on. In the action day in January in this year, we realized all things because we have enough information. We are cooperating with the police, Europol, and French colleagues. And then we found out that production is already in the move. So they are moving in some other locations. So we say that here machines for the cutting tobacco, there are no machines for packing and no more machines for cigarette production. So they are already moved. So this machines was prepared for the transportation already. We say that almost 10 tons of cut tobacco, 7 tons of tobacco leaves, and 29 million filters for cigarette productions, and 3 cutting machines. And if we calculate all together in November and this in January, what we say is that we see that the excise and VAT increase almost on the 7 million in these just two cases. They are not that big that you will find out in, I don't know, in French or Belgium or Italy. They are much, much bigger. I think this modus operandi is almost similar or identical in all member states here in Europe, because those criminals, those companies, know each other very well. So they are cooperating, they are changing informations, and what is here is interesting is no money transfers on their accounts, nothing, just cash. They are all businesses are going on cash. So probably they have some people, they are just moving cash around Europe. So now this investigation is still on. We are trying now to find out from where this tobacco comes in Croatia and in Bulgaria and then to Slovenia, and who are the people who are in charge for the money, how they are transporting money. Because the money is not with the drivers when they have consignment of either is tobacco leaves or is cigarettes or cutting tobacco, but someone must carrying this cash around of the Europe. And that is in short way from my side.
Mr. Pečnik, thank you very much for all this useful information. And now, I would like to invite our guests to join us for a panel discussion where we will be talking about the illicit tobacco trade in Western Balkans with guests coming from different countries. The panel will be moderated by Sandra Damian, who also worked as a member of a research group of the PMI Impact Project. Sandra is a partner and leads the advisory business at Grant Thornton, Slovenia, but she is also the president of the Slovene chapter of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and ACFE Advisors Council member. Please, Sandra, the floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel discussion on tobacco trade in Western Balkans. With us are Livia Panic-Miletic, head of the Basic Prosecution Office in Subotica. Livia, I hope I said it correctly. We don't want any conflicts, okay. Milena Milojevic from Office of AFCOS, represented from AFCOS on the International Cross-Border Cooperation. To translate...
Correction, Sandra, sorry. Governmental Audit Office for EU funds.
Okay.
We are cooperating with AFCOS.
Okay. And Davor Ilkic from Fund for Reconstruction from Croatia, and Dušan Pečnik from Slovenian Financial Unit. Welcome, and it's our pleasure to have you all on this panel on a very important topic. For some time already, but we believe also in the upcoming months and years as well. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's begin with a brief discussion on tobacco consumption. We've seen that tobacco consumption has been increasing globally, and if you look at statistics for 2021, which you see also on the graph, but also predictions for the following years, we see the big increase. And in 2021, just in US reached over 800 billion. And cigarettes are the most popular tobacco product, accounting for almost 90% of global sales of tobacco products. But one thing is also very important, not just the difference in between consumption between countries, but also the consumption when it comes to illicit tobacco. So maybe I'll start with you, Livia. Where does illicit tobacco trade appear? In which activities predominantly? And is this mainly, as we like to think, that less developed countries smoke more and this is where we should expect more, or is also more developed countries?
Yes, thank you for the question. But before I start, I wanted to ask you, Sandra, and maybe Milena and Davor, did they know, and did you know that some archaeological finds indicated that humans in Americas began using tobacco as far as 12,300 years ago, so thousand and thousand years before it comes to Europe. First in Europe, tobacco came in the 16th century, and it was first the France, after that the Portugal, Spain, and finally the UK. So it was just a fact showing that the tobacco is very, very closed with the humans. Humans were using tobacco. But when we speak about illicit trade tobacco, we can speak about illicit trade tobacco during the entire life of the tobacco production. So you can find it in the very beginning when it's a small plant, and it goes through the last person, the consumption, the person who is using the cigarettes or any other tobacco products. Of course, every of these activities are illegal, and we can say that there are three huge categories how people do these illegal activities. They are or smuggling, or counterfeit, or we speak about illicit cheap whites. You asked me about, is it interesting or interested only in the developing countries, and I think the yes, it is more, but we cannot exclude countries in the Western Europe because you can find some illicit activities there connected with the illicit tobacco trade. What is the main problem? The main problem is the affordability and accessibility to tobacco. It increased the consumption. If we compare countries in Europe, we can say that in the countries with the poor governments, with the poor border, with the corruption, the scale of illicit trade goes up. In the governments, which has the strong governments, strong laws, developed civil society, the scale goes down. But this scale can be very changeable, because we can say so in Sweden or Norway that the cigarettes and all kind of tobacco products are very expensive. So it could be that there is illegal activities connected with the tobacco are still. There are, but they are not, because the rules and the punishments and everything else made the illegal activity very slow. But if we compare it with some southern European countries, which are developed countries, okay, there is the illegal activity very high. So we cannot, say developing countries up, developed countries down. It can be changed.
Okay, thank you. Now that's very important to understand. But also, what I've seen also from practice, what is important to understand is actually not the distinction between what is the illicit trade, but also to understand the different types of illicit trade. So, what is actually? I mean, what are the types of illicit trade, and what do they actually mean? I mean, we hear about contraband cigarettes, about illicit whites, cut tobacco. So maybe, I don't know, I'll call on maybe Milena, but please feel free, any of you, to jump in if you want to add something on. So, Milena, maybe you can explain a little bit the difference of these types of illicit tobacco.
Okay, as you can see on this slide, let's first explain about legitimate sales. We have three broad categories here: paid sales, that the main category of legitimate sales, where tax is applied, final price. And opposite of them, on the other side, illicit trade, where duty is not paid. And that's the main difference between legitimate and illicit trade. So the two other legitimate sale categories are duty-free and cross-border, but let's focus on illicit trade and their categories because this is our topic today. So when we're speaking about illicit trade or duty not paid tobaccos, there are four categories. Livia mentioned it: contraband, counterfeit, illicit whites, and unbranded tobacco. So let's explain these categories so there is no any doubt what is which one. So contraband comprises legitimately produced cigarettes upon which there is no duty or tax has been paid. They are smuggled or bootlegged across a national border, and they are not declared if they are produced domestically. So we have a problem with tax, which is switched out of country's budget. When we are talking about counterfeit, they are completely fake products, and they are consequently not legitimately produced, and they have no duty paid. Illicit whites, we will talk about them mostly in next hour. Illicit whites, also known as cheap whites, they are usually manufactured legally in a source market for a sole purpose to be or being smuggled into a destination market. Last category, unbranded tobacco, they're sold as loss or shredded leaf tobacco. In Australia, they are known as chop chop. We will remember it for this acronym. And they're manufactured cigarettes sold loose in clear packaging. So these are main categories that we need to know and to differentiate.
Thank you, Milena, for this clarification. I think it's very important if we want to successfully fight against the illicit tobacco trade. I think it's also important to understand what all types are there and which countries are predominantly having which types of illicit tobacco.
Because if I can add only, Sandra, totally different activities, you producing legal, but you are smuggling it. Or you are making totally different kinds, but you put it to look like any kinds of Marlboro, so you counterfeit it. So you have to know with you are dealing, because your activity is quite different. Do we speak about the original or counterfeit cigarettes?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, whichever type or the activity, whether we're producing legal and then smuggling, or producing illegally and also then smuggling, we cannot agree. I believe that this is a good business, right? It creates quite a lot of profit, not just because it's let's say a product that can be sold on the illegal market, but also I think one which is quite negative aspect why this is a profitable business is because the penalties, if we compare to other organized crime activities, they're often light. Like if you compare to smuggling of drugs or other controlled goods, they're not that severe, and also they're not frequently imposed by judges. So I think this is also one of the problems that we're facing. Maybe if we also look at the roots where this illicit tobacco is smuggled into EU. This account, I came across the statistics. It accounts for about 10% of total consumption. And you were mentioning the countries before that were introduced smoking and the time that they started smoking. But the major exporters, as we know, and I don't know if this is now going to be changed, I'm sure it will be impacted by the crisis that we are now facing with the war in Ukraine. But the main exporters for the EU consumption of illicit tobacco was actually from Belarus and Ukraine. And they account for even more than 10%, I mean, for 20% of actually total illicit cigarettes consumed. So can we please look at these main routes, because we have many listeners that know of these routes, but they don't know where there's, for example, the origin country and where's the destination. So I think this would be very good to explain. So I don't know, whoever wants, maybe Milena, you again.
Yes.
So can we look first at this northeastern route? Can you please explain a little bit?
Well, here, as Sandra said, the numbers will tell us more than any words. So you hear that this route accounts for 25% of illicit cigarettes smoked in EU. And Sandra mentioned that main origin countries are Belarus and Ukraine, and we will see the impact of war and crisis, and it will be interesting to follow and analyze it. 50% of illicit whites for the Eastern European market and 50%, one half of contraband cigarettes, mainly for the Western European market, is flowing through this route, northeastern route. So let's explain briefly. The main countries of origin are Belarus and Ukraine. Entry into this map, entry countries are Slovakia, Poland, and Baltic countries. Transit countries are Poland and Slovakia, and the main destination countries are Germany, UK, France, Italy, and Scandinavian countries. So why it is interesting when you know the fact then that one package of illicit whites in North Macedonia costs €1.5, and in Germany the price for not illicit whites, sorry, one pack of tobacco is €1.5, and in Germany this price raises to €7.5. It explains mostly why this route is so interesting.
What about now? If you look at Maghreb routes, 10 billion cigarettes are smuggled by this route to Europe on a yearly basis. What can we say about this route? What is the main origin country and the destination?
Maghreb route, as you can see on this map, the main origin country is United Arab Emirates, and it's interesting that these organized groups are using the funds from illicit tobacco trade for financing terrorism. So this should be, this is the main risk of existing this kind of route. So main origin country, as I mentioned, is United Arab Emirates. 45% of illicit whites is traveling through this route, and transition country is Libya, and it is finalizing main destination country is France, but through Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco. So this is the Maghreb route.
Okay.
If there is anything else you're interested in, I will. But I think the main points are origin country, transit country, and main destination country.
I think because even the topic of the panel is Western Balkans, so I think we're most interested coming from this region is actually the Balkan route, and maybe we can call it the extended Balkan route.
Yes.
So let's a little bit focus a lot more on this route. 29 billion cigarettes yearly are smuggled through this route. Again, the same question, where did this illicit tobacco comes from? Where does it go? And do we expect some shifts nowadays? or intensifying this route and the volumes of illicit tobacco?
So, because of its strategic position, this extended Balkan route is, and economic hardship, this transnational organized criminal groups has the opportunity to transport and to smuggle tobacco through this route. We should divide this route into two parts, into northwestern, which involves Balkan, Central and Western Europe, and southeastern from Turkey, Bulgaria and Greece. Major country of origin and also transit is Bulgaria. And in Bulgaria, we have organized criminal groups as main actors, and they are main smugglers through this route. Main countries of origin also, except Bulgaria, are, as we mentioned on Maghreb route, United Arab Emirates and also Iran. Turkey is a hub for illicit trade with one of the biggest black markets, and the main type of smuggling is illicit white, again around 50% of all illicit cigarettes smuggled.
But let me just ask now Livia here. Livia, what is the role of Serbia here? Is Serbia a transit point predominantly, or is also the becoming production country?
I would say that we are now the transit country, since we are geographically very well positioned between the south and the north, and we are now we are on the border of the EU, so we are a very important country because through the north of the Serbia where I live, we are on the same border, on the very border with the Hungary, so it is the door to the EU, and of course that we have the Romania, we have the Bulgaria, then we have the Croatia. So for the smugglers, we are very, very interesting. I don't think that we are the country of producing, but I would say we are mainly for transiting, and we have, which is not very, I'm not very proud to say that, criminal specialists who are really, really very good in smuggling techniques, especially when we speak about medium scale large groups.
So, I mean, in Serbia, many people smoke.
So yes.
Let me ask you a provocative question.
Please do.
Are they smoking all legal produced cigarettes, or is also destination a country also, let's say, from parts that come from North Macedonia or Bulgaria?
I think half-half, to be honest with you, because the economy here is for the group whose income is very, very low. They will, of course, try to buy cigarettes on illegal places like open markets, like, small shops near border where you can find counterfeit or smuggled cigarettes. Don't forget, Sandra, and I think you will know that we were speaking about in previous discussions. So the cultural habits of Serbian include that we love to socialize, we love to be in kafana, and we love to have slava and any kind of gatherings, and of course that we drink, and of course with the drink we smoke. So we don't divide those things. And the third very important thing is that the smoking is not forbidden in our restaurants, in our coffee shops, in outside on the street. And the foreigners who came in Serbia are shocked when they see it.
True. Yeah, we'll come to this cultural part later on.
Olivia said, sorry, Sandra, Olivia said that something that is in collusion with our Eurosong context, where our song spoke about that we have to be healthy. So
Yes.
Olivia said the fact that we are drinking, smoking, and everything else. Yes, there is when you go to the town and with your acquaintances, there is a culture of roll your own tobacco. It is present, and most of people are not, especially on the south of our country, are not aware of the risk which this kind of fine cut tobacco brings with itself. So yes, we can say that it is half and a half. Of buying legally produced ones, and on the opposite side.
And I have to add, you know, now we speak about physical health, but we have to take care about our mental health. So our mental health is socializing with all things that we mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if it's a cultural habit, but it's important, and you mentioned very important aspect, the health. So when we smoke illegally produced cigarettes, it's one of the, I think, negative consequences that we rarely mention is actually, we don't know what we smoke. It could be very, very bad for health. So, but let me ask you, Dusan. We heard about cultural habits in Serbia. Croatia, I think they're in between a little bit, Serbia and Slovenia. But let's now return to Slovenia in terms of us being first country when you enter Schengen zone. So how does this, we discussed a little bit about the Balkan route. What can we say about Slovenia? What is the role of Slovenia on this route?
Yeah, hello to all. In Slovenia we have one big problem, because the Slovenia is a very transit country. So we don't have no land border with the third countries, only one port in Koper and one airport at Ljubljana. So it's very difficult to put a surveillance on all this traffic going through Slovenia. So the cooperation between these countries, I know we have very good cooperation with all the countries around Slovenia. We change information daily, basically. So we need to work together. Teamwork is here very important, because we don't have no time. When we once detect one truck on the Croatian or Hungarian border, we have only, Slovenia is not so big country. You have the diagonal from Lendava to Koper is about 300 kilometers. So if you calculated how much time the truck needs to transport the transportation from Lendava to Koper, you need 1-2 hours to react, to do something. So, but the other problems we detected is all member states have very different level of rate taxes, especially in excise. So that is the problem, because the Slovenia somewhere in the middle, especially in tobacco. For tobacco, 1 kilo of tobacco, Slovenia is about 100 euros excise, and you need to count and also VAT. So we are not so much high. The countries like France, Italy, especially UK now, or Ireland, or Norway, they are much, much higher excise on tobacco now. So we know why they are producing this and transporting mostly in France or UK now.
Let me ask you also this way. Will Slovenian authorities that fight against illicit trade in tobacco, will they be happy once Croatia enters into Schengen? And it's expected next 2 years.
I don't think there will be some big changes, because we are now already cooperate very good with the Croatian colleagues now, especially in the customs department and in the investigation unit. Because when you became members of the EU, there is no land border, no more. So there is no customs control anymore. So we need to do something else. We have mobile units. As Croatia has also mobile units, we can use them, or we can share information and do each part for each country, and so-called chain breach actions is very good now.
Okay, we'll come to this cooperation a little bit later, but before we go to this, let's now look at illicit tobacco traffic and concealment. So, because we really need to understand, how this is packed, what weights and volumes we can expect in shipments. So maybe we start with Livy and then Dushan with you, just to be able to understand, what are we looking for once we are checking for the illicit?
Well, it depends, Sandra. Do we speak about large scale transnational criminal network? Do we speak about?
Let's start with that. Yeah.
Can we start? Thank you. So I think it is the beginning of the research because transnational criminal network is a very wealthy criminal network, and they can allow a very expensive modus operandi of illicit trade tobacco. So we speak about merry-go-round, where we speak about.
What is merry-go-round? Sorry for interrupting. What is merry-go-round?
Yes, it's very interesting. I would say it is, in money, we have a money laundering. And for me, merry-go-round is a kind of laundering of the goods. So merry-go-round is the way where how you want to hide what is in the cargo. And it can be done, yes, thank you for this picture. It can be done by boat, but it can be done by railway. So basically the origin country is a country where all the goods and all the papers connected with the goods are okay. So everything is on the how it should be. And then that ship, if we speak about ship, goes to one port, the second port, the third port, the fourth port. And somehow in every of the ports, all the cargo going down or up a little bit, all the paper are changing a little bit, okay? So it's not anymore the cargo in transit, but somehow it became the country of the consumers. And then it's not, it can be that the ship come back to the original port and then again go to another port. So what they want to do is to hide the real cargo in that ship or in that train, because somebody who wants to check it will totally lose himself in lots of ports, lots of stations, lots of papers, lots of changing, renaming the cargo, the documents. So it really goes around until they really successfully hide the real cargo or the real destination. Now, that kind of transport is connected with the international large-scale criminals because they can afford it. Also here, what we have on the picture, if you allowed me, Sandra, to explain this,
yes,
is another type of trying to hide is the misdeclaration. So we have a very good in slides example from Romania to Italy, I think. Every border has his rules, but some basic rules, papers you have to fulfill in every border. We call it in Serbia JCI. So who is the origin, who is the transporter, what is the country of the destination. And when you alter these declarations, you are able to hide the cargo. Now, you have to be very well organized. You have to have a very good logistic. You have to be very well connected with the local authorities. You have to have a group of people who will do that for you, and everything costs. So I would say that the merry-go-round and misdeclarations would be the types of international high-level criminal groups.
That's true. I mean, if it costs that much, all this.
Yes, it costs very much, to find the good counterfeiter who will do this type of papers for you. Then, of course, you have to pay somebody in that port who will not be very diligent in looking that truck or that shipment or that train, and you have to have lots of people who will do that for you, and every of these activities cost. What we are looking now is something that is connected with the medium scale of the smugglers. And to be honest with you, Sandra, I'm mostly afraid of these types of smugglers because they are very, very they diverse their activities and they are very sophisticated in fraudulent activities. We had some cases where we have a truck here, what we can see in 2020 in September. They put a truck full with cigarettes in one border. So the whole activity was on that border. But on the other border, on the other part of the country, the bigger truck, more trucks were crossing the borders. So they were, they tricked us. They really tricked us, and they are usually using trucks. Then, of course, the cars, every kind of empty space in cars. Preparing for this conference, I found something very interesting. In Singapore, the border officers find in the huge Buddha figure, which was imported, it was full, two of them, full with the counterfeit cigarettes. 12,000 boxes were hid in that huge Buddha figures.
Vanilla cupcakes, I think.
I know that you will mention that.
Yes. No Buddha can outperform vanilla cupcake.
Yes, of course. So that is something that is really, really for me the most interesting things to hide cigarettes in the cake and try to hide the smell of cigarettes, making a cake, and we agreed that it could be a very new flavor of the cupcakes, maybe. But I also wanted to tell you that I found also a very original way to hide cigarettes. So in the parts of the Europe where are the huge woods, so they cut the tree, they make a hole in the tree, they fulfill that hole with the cigarettes, and they put it on the track, so they import trees. But basically, in the whole of these trees is a huge amount of cigarettes. So the creativity of the smugglers is unbelievable.
Dusan, let me ask you, we heard creativity. Where does this creativity come from? Which country? This vanilla cupcake. Livia, let me ask you.
Oui.
Excuse me, Sandra. Okay. Can I make just one remark? When you mentioned vanilla cupcake, maybe one of the smugglers was woman cook.
Was a very good cook. I'm sorry, I don't have that information, but we are the winners of the vanilla cupcakes.
Well, that's a diversity between smugglers.
Yes.
Dusan, we heard Buddha, we heard vanilla cupcake, and earlier today we also saw some of the photos that you showed how we detect. Do we have these interesting, innovative methods that we experience in Slovenia that we see that they're transiting through? Any Buddhas coming?
No, Buddha, but frigidaires. And the last case was in the border, in Croatian border, in Bregana, Obrežje. We found 8 million pieces of cigarettes were hiding in frigidaires. They are imported from, I think, from Serbia. It's coming, yeah.
So vanilla cupcake, fridge, everything that's like this. We can expect, but no innovative ways of hiding like this.
No, in Slovenia now we have the problems with the tobacco leaves now and the illicit production here in Slovenia and transporting them to France and...
How we transport this?
Just regular shipments, no problems, because they have documents, put it on the end states, I don't know, maybe Poland or Slovakia, but never goes to those directions. They always go to usually to France or Belgium sometimes also, and now in Italy. In this case, we now in investigation with the France colleagues, I think 2020, where about 33 tons of illicit cigarettes were transported from Slovenia to France. So it's quite a lot.
We just need to become more innovative in Slovenia. Okay. Livia, you mentioned earlier, and let me also continue with both of you. You said you were afraid of most of these cover loads, not this merry-go-round, but this. But what about these smaller groups? You know, we see here in, on the roof of the vehicle or on the car plates. Can we expect this also of these medium-level groups, or this is also this? Let's say, I wouldn't even say the daily migrants, but weekend migration. You know, we have many people who are from former republics working, not just Slovenia, but Austria and other ones. Do we expect the volume of this concealment in vehicles like on Sundays afternoon?
On Sundays afternoon, we are speaking about bootlegging usually. When we speak about these pictures, what we can see, we speak about the medium size group. They are criminals. And what is characteristic of those types of criminals here in Serbia is, the transnational, they are very, very focused on one type of the smuggling. The medium groups do all kinds of smuggling. Sometimes it's the tobacco, sometimes it's some drugs, sometimes these are some refugees, unfortunately, and they really using small trucks, small vehicles, lorries, and of course the huge trucks to transport. And again, the creativity is unbelievable where they put the cigarettes. It can be in the roof. It can be all empty places in vehicles. They make empty containers, especially for any kind of vehicle. They put it in the wheels. That was surprising for me. I saw it. So the wheels were fully with the cigarettes inside of the wheels, of course. So this is the type of criminal for which we who are working with the police and prosecutors, they are sometimes very successful because many of them, Sandra, are doing this in all around the border, and they do it in the connection with the borders and the policemen on the border. Not just, that is very important, on Serbian side, but also on the side of the border of the EU. We are on the border with the Hungarians, and we do have those situations that not only Serbian officers are included in this scheme, but the Hungarians too. So when you prepare the huge operation, sometimes the rumor is going because it is the operation which lasts. These types of operations can be made quickly, so the information we can miss this information.
Mm-hmm. Dusan, so Olivia said this is bootlegging on Sundays. Are your Sundays peaceful or no?
No. It's no timing now for these smugglers. So especially they are active now in the summer because they know there will be a lot of traffic on the roads now, so they can hide it between this traffic, and they started now in July and they will end it in the end of October, maybe November. Yes, then it's finished. Then they will looking for new locations. They will move it to the machines and all the things. There is no time when you can expect it, something like that in the border or inside the country.
And how do you get the information? Do you get the information from colleagues from Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia?
Sometimes
you can
yes.
expect the shipment coming through, or
Sometimes yes, but sometimes our mobile units, how can I say, they have just lucky days. They found it. They pick up some truck or van and do some observation, so they can find the cigarettes. But the cigarettes now is, I have some information now in Belarus. We're talking before. They have some company there in Grodno. In Grodno is a regular factory of for tobacco and cigarettes, but we don't know how much of this production is regular and how much is illegal. So they are selling this via Dubai airport, Dubai port, or Australia also. So they have some cases from these companies of the cigarettes, but they are not cheap white cigarettes. They are regular cigarettes, but they were not paid any duties for these cigarettes, nothing. Even though they don't have any tax stamps or something like that, nothing. But they are from the same company.
okay, so
May I say just one thing, Sandra? So here in this part of the Serbia, we have those summer migrations. Milena was talking about that when we had those previous panels. People come from the Germany, from Austria, and going down in Macedonia or Turkey, and this bootlegging is every day in our border during the summer, as Dusan said. So the whole summer, and we can expect it anytime, in any part of the day, night.
okay, so just to clarify, if I bring on weekend or Friday when I return from my business trip more than one pack, what is the allowed amount? One pack?
No, you can have one pack.
One pack. So if I bring 2 packs,
no problem.
I would be a criminal and I don't report.
No, this goes like your luggage, personal luggage, so it's no problem.
Okay, just to make sure I'm not crossing the line. So let's now look a little bit other things, different things. We have the protocol, WHO framework and convention that actually intensifies and brings on some new, I wouldn't say even methods or ways, but some aspects on which we can be more successful in preventing these kind of trade. So maybe Davor, I didn't forget you over there, but I left important issues for you. So what are the primary documents or policies lately in fight against illicit trade? Can you please a little bit explain to us this?
Well, I would mention at first World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. I find it most important because it has been signed, I believe, by 168 countries, if I recall. And the aim of the convention is to lower the use of tobacco and tobacco products in general, because it's detrimental health and other effects. I'm not a medical doctor for health, but that would be it. And also next to the framework convention, I would like to mention World Health Organization protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products. It's very important because it was adopted in the fall of 2012. And the main issue, protocol acknowledges that trade in contraband and counterfeit products increased the general use of tobacco. That's normal.
Davor, just interrupt you. So what is required according to this protocol? What is required from national authorities in fight against illicit tobacco?
Well, Article 15 is very important. It complements Article 15 of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, addresses means of countering illicit trade in tobacco products, and it's a key aspect of comprehensive tobacco control policy. And the protocol is exceptionally important because it presents consensus on joint battle against illegal tobacco production. And it's very important. I mean, as a former police officer, member of the law enforcement, I know how it's important to have control on supply chain. And we detect all the vulnerable focal points. We can reduce illicit trade, illicit counterfeit, everything related to tobacco products.
But you mentioned that many of the countries are signatories, but I also heard that Slovenia did implement.
Not yet. We all know about the tobacco protocol from, I think, 2014, something like that. But it's not yet implemented in our national laws. So
it's not. So what is the reason? I'm asking both of you, Davor and Dusan. So what is the reason? I mean, okay, how it was developed? Is it maybe because, I mean, the point is when I discuss with many different authorities, there's actually, I think, a lack of understanding on the measures that need to be implemented, or unwillingness. I don't know. What is the reason behind? So maybe both of you can comment on this.
I think in Slovenia it's just a...
For the Slovenia, maybe colleagues can speak.
Yeah, in Slovenia I think it's just a political matter, because we are having now in changing government in 1 year. That's a problem, because we don't have no continuity, so we cannot talk about that for the long distance now. Every year we hope when we get a new government, okay, they will implement it, but there's no time for that, obviously. Or the other side is so strong, we don't know yet what's happening.
But how is this protocol developed? I mean, how is this developed? I mean, who is involved in developing the protocol?
I think that all the companies, they are producing the cigarettes and tobacco products. And,
together with the law enforcement?
Other governments where there's already implemented that in their laws, but...
Well, if I may just jump, in any case, if you want to find a solution, you have to put people together at the table and with a different background, different aspects. I always address interdisciplinary approach, because it brings some new value, how different people look on the same thing and find best solution. That means I know how the tobacco company dealing with the human resources, but maybe having police, former police enforcement on the side, on the scene, they can always bring some valuable information, because I believe smugglers, perpetrators, traffickers always have someone inside between public authorities, between law enforcement, snitchers, that you want. And if we maybe look on the other side, change the tactics, maybe if we want to develop a new strategy, new approach, we have to infiltrate between them. And only we have a tone from the top, and we can make on the global scale.
So more effort and bring results.
And here we see on the screen, you know, those who are parties to the protocol and states that are not party. Is this mandatory to become a party, and they're just not convinced yet, or this is on a who wants
to? No. To my knowledge, the protocol, just some information, as of January 2018, I think it's 180 countries plus European Union have become parties of the FCTC. And between them, 54 signed the protocol between 2013 and 2014. And the protocol required 40 parties to enter into force. And there are some measures have to be met on the national and international level. Only countries that are parties to the FCTC, Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, can become parties, and that country has to take some actions. They are considered on 3 levels, on national and international. If you're talking on national level, that means enactment of national legislation and implementation of other administrative and institutional measures required to implement the protocol. And second step would be approval of the protocol for ratification or accession. That's usually by national parliament or executive authority. And finally, international level, that means deposit of the instrument of ratification or accession to the United Nations Treaty section. And these are elements are completed, depends on every country, only constitutional system, it differs from country to country. That's internal rules.
One
For
of
me,
the
Sandra, if I can add,
please.
for me, I think the biggest problem is are the countries who signed that protocol, but only formally, and they are not doing anything. You know, if you ask those authorities, they are saying, okay, but we did it, you can see it, but they actually didn't do anything of these steps, what Davor was explaining, to implement the protocol in national laws and to make some new rules, make some new laws according to those protocols.
Well, I totally agree, but with every new law, with every new intervention, it takes some time. You know how governments are very, and public officials are very slow, and there's a lack of will and maybe human resources and I don't know, maybe some new tools that bring bigger results.
So, touching on the topic of the protocol, so we heard there's a lack of political will, one of the problems. But when reading and actually discussing about protocol also with other colleagues, I believe this is for me, you know, two actually very important elements in this protocol, which I think would be beneficial for prevention. And one of this is knowledge hubs. So. I find this very important and useful, but when speaking to some authorities, this sharing information and training and this is not much welcome. So what can we talk about here a little bit?
No, we have now, we have groups now to impact. Impact is under the Europol, so we are now have impact for tobacco and water pipe tobacco is different group, and then we have impact group for designer fuels, and another impact group is for the alcohol. So we separate that for now. But the changing informations now via, I don't know, Naples or Siena, it took like 3 months when you change the information, but we don't have the time. So we must react very quick when we have some consignments is on the way. So what we need, WhatsApp, Viber, Signal, but this is very, very unprotected now. So the EU is now, we are talking about that to develop some other platform on which way we can share the information very quick and very successful. So I think that is more on the politicians, on the Brussels now, not so much on us, but we hope that will be developed again.
So, Dauri, you wanted also to comment on knowledge.
Yes, I totally agree. But knowledge hubs is something that goes in favor. I mean, in every World Health Organization regions, they are expert. They share expertise, information, and knowledge, and provide training, region and globally. That's something what is necessary. What colleague just mentioned. He has more experience, I believe, in custom border, and know what's the vulnerable focal points and what can be improved. But it's also important to have knowledge hubs because every government, every sector, every member of the law enforcement can report, turn to someone for information, for instruction, and that's. I think they have my compliments for that.
And what about the supply chain control? What can you say about this? How is this envisaged according to the protocol? What is TFZ management?
Well, for TFZ, trade-free zone management, to continue with supply chain mechanism and to assure the security and preventive measures, that are aimed at explaining how to take the necessary measures to prevent the diversion of tobacco products into illicit trade channels. And trade-free zone management is one of the most important and effective controls as manufacturing and transaction in tobacco and tobacco products, including prohibiting tobacco products from being intermingled with non-tobacco products. It is important for countries to take these measures to ensure that international transit and transshipment covers duty-free sales, and that the effective measures are implemented in order to be solved. That's the main target, and that's simplified understood.
What about Dusan, licensing, traceability? How is this working in practice? Track and trace?
Yeah, it's mostly we're going on the changing informations, modus operandi to sharing with other countries, so they are involved because we know a lot of drivers now from Bosnia is involved here in Slovenia. They are almost daily, they are on the transportation of the tobacco leaves or cigarettes or something else, but Bosnia is not yet in the EU, so we have problems with the changing informations. The mostly now goes on the personal knowing. If you know someone in some service on there, you can call it, but you never know the information. They will get you or not. They will give you all information, or just a part of information. So it's always open and risky. But the other colleagues in the member states, now it's not so much a problem to sharing the informations and the modus operandi, how things go and how they are working. And especially now we need some platform for how they change money. Because all these tobacco things goes with the cash. There's no money transfer on the bank accounts, only cash. So.
What about
Bitcoins?
Yeah, Bitcoins and stuff. Also. Not the regular banking business.
No transfer via bank accounts, no way.
No, you mentioned one very important point when it comes to cooperation, and this when you want to find out information that you call personally, that you know somebody, but that's not sustainable. I mean, in order
you
want
cannot
to
use that on the court or on the prosecutor's way. Just the information is good when you need to react very quick, but then you need the official documents or informations. You must to go via or Vienna or Siena or via Naples. So you need to collect all the evidence regularly. So those informations are spontaneous informations, are very good for the react. How do you react? What you will do in the first case.
Are you familiar with this concept, triangular cooperation?
Yeah.
Also, so
we're working that in the impact group all the time.
Who is part of this cooperation? I mean, which entities are involved?
Now in the impact is practically all, in the tobacco cases, all the countries the members of the EU now.
But is it only between the law enforcement, or we also include representatives from tobacco industry companies?
Now we have prosecutors now, especially EPUs. Also we're trying to do with them some cases, so we'll see if this will be okay. Police and customs officers or financial administration, it depends on the country what they have it. So with the tobacco companies, yeah, we have contacts sometimes in some when the impact organize some workshops or something like this. Yeah, we are working with them too. In this cases in Slovenia, we also asked the Philip Morris, they will come and they take the samples, so we can see now what kind of tobacco, from where. We are interested if we can get the information from where this tobacco comes. We know it was transported from Paroma in Bulgaria to Slovenia, yeah, but with which country is the origin of this tobacco?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point that you mentioned. Livia, you also deal with these cases, you know, as a prosecutor. How important is for you to get input also, not just from law enforcement, but also, as Dusan mentioned, you know, from tobacco company? I mean, is this useful or not? Because everyone's kind of, you know, law enforcement, public sector, you know, but, you know, coming from the expert side, I think it would be even more useful for prevention. What do you say? How useful is, who do you cooperate with? How successful is it?
Dusan said that the information is very important. I would say the information is as a gold. You know, it's precious. The nightmare of every prosecutor is when we know that somebody did, but we cannot prove it. Now that's the worst thing that can happen in our work. Diversity of information is the primary, and we work with the police enforcement, with the border, with the companies, tobacco companies, on some regional conferences, and we were speaking about that, and I don't think it is for a long time good, but for solving a problem, it's good to have a very good personal connections with the professionals who are working in tobacco industry, and cross-border professionals who work with this type of criminal. It can help. It can lead us to the information that we miss. So the cooperation, but not just with the police enforcement, but with all kinds of authorities which are in that circle of producing tobacco products is most important for us when we build a case.
Sandra, if I can make just one remarks. As a former law enforcement, I left the force 1 year ago, but I'm still in contact with my colleagues from organized crime, and that's my point of view, just my opinion from experience. In the last 5 years, we noticed some lack activity in combating and preventive measures, combating illicit trade, tobacco smugglers, and others. And that is something why tobacco companies have to put more efforts, because they can change the course of the fight. They have means, they have assets, and if they put the pressure and put the framework, there can be we will bring some results in law enforcement in every national.
I'm sorry, Davor, do you speak about the tobacco industry, that they use their assets and
yes, of course.
Yes, I think it's very important. Mm-hmm. Yes,
so maybe that's then a good time to actually, because we can expect a little bit more intensified activity in the region. It's a good time that we actually rethink this, and some initiative comes of more cooperation also, not just between the law enforcement, but also with the experts from the industry, because if we want to be successful, this is... So, and next action point. So let's now just a couple of points I would like to mention with you guys before we finish for today. Tax issues. We cannot not to mention tax issues, because people say, if we coordinate, so we have the same tax levels, this will also decrease the level of illegal activity. But I'm not so sure. So can you a little bit comment on this? I mean, you yeah. What is your opinion?
If you look at the custom size now in the member states is covered with the same taxes. So it's not important if you import it in Slovenia or if you will import it in Croatia. The tax for the some goods will be the same. But the excise duties now are the really in the big. We don't have, for example, in Slovenia we have, I think it's 4th highest excise duties for beer. The highest is in Ireland. And the tobacco is the highest in the France, and the UK is not member anymore in the EU, but they are imported tobacco to Ireland, and they are going through the UK. So the tax rates are very different now, especially in tobacco cases, because they are always looking where the tobacco are very expensive, because they know they could sell that very easily. It's no problem, because the people looking the cheapest tobacco now. Last cases we saw in France, the people from UK that coming to the education on the France, they are looking for the Marlboro cigarettes. They are counterfeited in Germany or in Slovenia, and doesn't matter where, because this Marlboro, it's for instance, there's some kind of status. I have Marlboro, but I buy it in France. We know this counterfeit, but okay, it's Marlboro. So when I don't expect that the member states country will be so much political will, they will go the same level of the excise duties. I don't think so, because excise duties are still on the national level. So like VAT is the same thing. It's very different. That means a lot.
So that would not be a good measure that we equalize and this one solve the problem. This would just create another problem.
Yeah.
Because if you have lower salaries, let's say if you compare only Serbia, Croatia, well, okay, Croatia is a little bit different because it's part of the EU, but let's take non-EU country. If you have the same level of taxes for cigarettes in Serbia in comparison to the same level as in Slovenia, but the salaries, I think we would just shift the problem to another country. I don't know. Livia, what is also your opinion about this?
Well, you know, the high taxes are a very good road for making a place for smuggling and counterfeiting. But this is not the only road which will lead us to the illicit trade tobacco problem. It's a very complex problem. As I mentioned, you know, in some Scandinavian countries, you have high taxes, very expensive cigarettes, but the illicit trade tobacco is very low. Why? Because the society is developed, the awareness of the health impact of the cigarettes is high, and so they had lots of approaches to this problem, and I think high taxes are only one. And of course, as you said, we cannot speak globally because each country, each culture has his own ways of looking this problem.
True. I agree. And what do you expect now with COVID-19? I mean, we are now in post-COVID phase. I think we're now faced with more serious problems now as well. You know, we have the war in Ukraine, but not. I mean, we know that Ukraine was one of the origin countries, but what I'm more concerned is also the economic impact that we will have this war and people will not be able to afford. Would this also impact not just the roots, but also the volume of illicit tobacco increasing? This is a question for all. I mean, you can any can comment on this.
I'm sure that it will, because in Serbia now we have day raising of prices. It's incredible. Salaries are the same and the prices are rising, so it is expected that because of the impact of this war will increase the illicit tobacco trade in future.
Well, I can agree. If I may say, in every war situation is expected criminal activity, especially smugglers illicit tobacco, but I believe with the increasingly criminal activity, there is a reduced detection activity from law enforcement. That's normal because of the war situation in different area. They are not able to detect or take the measures they usually do.
I think that the COVID situation doesn't cost us anything on the illicit tobacco production, but now from the Ukrainian crisis, yeah, because we already detected that some companies from Ukraine, they used to produce the tobacco, especially cigarettes. They are moving or selling machines for the illicit production now, and they are setting the production here in Slovenia also from the Ukrainian machines now.
So are you suggesting that we should carefully watch, you know, where we have more of migration, unfortunately, because of war? Yeah.
You know, Sandra, every crisis, as I think Davor said, is increasing criminal activities near those countries where the crisis is huge. The Corona crisis was very interesting because it was somehow freezing the activity for some period. That was very interesting, you know. Exactly. War and other kinds of crises are increasing, but the Corona was very special. It freezed activities for some time.
Yeah, but we have to be careful here. Maybe they were changing modus operandi. Maybe there were more online sales, and because there was an increase in the logistics. I mean, we have to be careful here.
So I always say in my job we have to be very clever, and we have to have a very good imagination, because the criminals are sometimes 1 or 2 steps in front of us. So
we saw the innovation. Innovation does not have the limits. Okay, so let's think we're in the final minutes. So maybe like to use just for wrapping up some also recommendation. So each of you, please, in a couple of statements, what do you see is the best prevention method, and what do you predict when it comes to illicit tobacco trade in not in 5 years, but for this year, for 1 year from now? So let's start with you, Dusan, since you're closest to me now.
Okay, I think concerning our cases, we are finished now. The sharing the informations and the modus operandi is most important now, and working together on the cases doesn't matter from which country is coming, but where all these countries involved in some route of smuggling or illicit production, they need to work together. This is the only way. Because
when you say we need to work together, who do you mean?
I mean all the law enforcement, prosecutors, or even the companies. They are regularly producing the tobacco products. So all of these parts need to work together, because otherwise we are each in our side and we are not connected. It's not good.
Milena, Davor, Livia, who wants to take the next?
From the shoes of internal auditor, I would always raise the flag for prevention, and I would recommend aggressive awareness campaign, especially between young people. Because illicit trade is living because there are consumers and buyers. So if we focus on this side, on buyers, and raise awareness between them, especially between young people, I think it would have a good result.
Good.
I have to agree with Milena. I'm working on the repression side, but I think the pressure is more important than the repression side. So raising awareness, making a civil society stronger, so putting the consumers in the situation that they will all pay some penalty if they buy some illegal products, or they will have some very serious medical problems, and they will have maybe socially isolated, and making stronger society, raising awareness is the preventive side, very, very important. Looking from the repressive side, I have to agree, of course, with the Dusan. So communication between all government and non-government authorities is important, because we have to change the information, and we have to think in advance. That is very important in my job.
Okay, thank you. And Davor, your final thoughts?
Well, I believe in tobacco company can change the course of action and win this war against illicit trade, because it's in their favor, and they have assets, they have energy, they have will, and if they work closely with governments on different level, that's a new strategy.
Yeah, I must agree here, except for the point that I believe that law enforcement needs a little bit to open up and cooperate with the private sector, because I think here is one of the bottlenecks. With having said this, thank you all for being on this panel. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope that we will also have an opportunity next time. So Davor, Milena, Livia, Dusan, thank you. With this, we came to an end to this panel discussion, and thank you all listeners for being here today with us, and see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for this interesting discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again thank our great guests for sharing their insights with us today. And I hope you find it useful. We hope that the results of this project will also help with the fight against illegal trade. The ultimate purpose of this project was to identify key drivers of illicit tobacco trade, identifying best practices in this fight and capacity building training. The project team is thankful to stakeholders for their cooperation during the project and appreciates the information and feedback from public institutions and industry. I would like to thank our whole team, which includes research groups from 3 leading universities in the region and abroad. First of all, University of Ljubljana, second, University of Leuven, and third, Nazarbayev University, Kazakhstan, and all colleagues at the Center of Business Excellence for their support and assistance. And we acknowledge the support of PMI Impact in funding this project, as well as we appreciate a great cooperation from the PMI team, especially Madalena Oceta, Sandra Möll-Schulze, and in last year, Tatiana Stratilova. Achieving sustainable results against illegal trade requires focus, coordinated actions, and resources. In this content, PMI Impact creates a platform for a wide range of organizations and stakeholders to implement impactful projects against illegal trade, together with building synergies and innovative solutions. And we are happy that we had an opportunity to co-create it. If you are interested to have a look at our webinars and online courses which have been developed within the project, please contact us and we will be happy to provide you with access. Thank you for your time and I wish you all the best.